Hey everyone, it's Emily. I'm back with Justin and Ripley, and we're super excited because today's topic is Lume. We get to talk about watches and Lume. It's gonna be a fun one. We've got great examples we can't wait to share with you.
Also, if you haven't done so already, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can stay up to date on our latest video content.
Before we dive in, we've definitely got to do a wrist check. So Ripley, it's great to see you again.
Likewise. So I know we're talking about Lume, but I am wearing nothing with any Lume on it. I'm just embracing my poolside Vegas life right here. Rolex Datejust Pearl Master, mother of pearl dial, diamond bezel.
All the bells and whistles.
Yeah, this isn't necessarily my style, but they recently discontinued the Pearl Master as a whole, and it's an impressive watch, whether or not it's something you're interested in rocking. And of course, as it's diamond dials, no Lume whatsoever on it. Dial hands, nothing. What about you?
I was gonna say, I'm kind of going with the Lume free today. I've got just a classic 26 millimeter Lady President, excuse me. I love it. It's got a barked bezel and sort of the barked center links as well.
Diamond bark bezel.
Yeah, diamond.
Emily's trademark gold.
I have my own Lume, yep. Yeah. Of course. What do you got, Justin?
I'm the only one with Lume today when we're talking about Lume, really. A little disappointing, but I'm going with the Panerai. It's got the nice sandwich dial, plenty of Lume on there. I guess I got Lume for the whole team today.
For the Lume
it's the Luminor, yes, so very appropriate. But yeah, I think it's a great looking watch.
You are holding down the Lume fork today. We love it. We definitely want to know, what are you guys wearing? Give your own little wrist check in the comments. Definitely let us know what's good this week on your wrist. Now, like we said, the topic of conversation today is Lume. We have some examples that we can't wait to dig in. We're kind of going to take a little bit of a journey. So what are we starting with, Ripley?
Well, I think it might make sense to start with sort of the first type of Lume, not necessarily the first, but all Lume today, pretty much, with a few exceptions, is photoreactive, which means it glows in response to light, regardless of what color, specific compound, or what it's mixed with. But if you go back, talking about Rolex specifically, in like mid-90s and earlier, you're going to find radioactive Lume. So the first example we have here, reference 1680 Submariner, and it's got Tritium Lume. So it's the second style of radioactive Lume. Originally they had radium, far too radioactive, was getting people sick. Switched to Tritium, significantly less radioactive, but still radioactive.
So the difference there, right, is with that, it doesn't have to be charged up by light, right? And we talk about Lume today when you say it's photoreactive. You charge it up with light, it holds that energy, then the lights go out and it lets the Lume go, emits light for a certain amount of time. With this type of Lume, you don't have to charge it up. It's always glowing. You just don't see it during the day. It's too bright.
As long as its radioactivity works. So Tritium has a half-life of about 12.5 years, which means when this watch is brand new, for the first decade and a half, it would glow whether or not it received any light exposure. How it glows is that radioactivity excites the pigments in the paint, and it glows. As the radioactivity decays, it stops glowing. And another thing with Tritium is you'll notice this isn't white anymore. When it was new, it would have been more of a whitish color. It starts to develop this kind of a patina as it kind of burns itself out in the chemicals age and the absence of light and all of that. So this won't glow anymore, but when it was new, it would have glowed perpetually.
Yeah, which is kind of nice. I mean, it's a little different than things are today, but it's kind of interesting to where you don't have to charge it up. I mean, it could be in your dresser all day, all night long. You take it out and it's still glowing. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and they still actually use Tritium today, not Rolex and not really in a lot of high-end watchmaking, and it's no longer even a paint. Certain companies, like where it's more kind of tool-oriented, and not, when I say tool, like a Rolex Submariner, but more of like a a few $100s or something like that, like Marathon, and it's a gas-filled glass tube that's filled with Tritium gas, and it glows, but again, like anything Tritium, it's got its life.
Yeah, it lasts so long, and then it kind of burns out.
So it's not like old technology, but rarely do you see it, and certainly Rolex doesn't use it anymore.
Definitely a cool part on the Lume conversation. You can't really talk about Lume without talking about Tritium. And I think this was a great example. We've got more. We've definitely got this beautiful Datejust II that we have to speak to for many reasons, but I'll kind of let you kick this one off.
Yeah, I guess in the same way that, at least now, the most interesting thing about Tritium is how it looks when it's not in the dark, and its patina. For any of the photoreactive Lume, it's really what it looks like in the dark. That's when it comes to live. This is actually a really interesting example of Rolex Luminous, because after Tritium they switched to Luminova and then Super Luminova before Chrome Light, and that's later. We'll get to that. But you can tint Super Luminova and photoreactive Lume different colors. So if you look at this watch, the Arabic numerals are kind of a bluish tinted color, and they'll actually glow blue in the dark, whereas the hands are more traditional, what you'd think of Luminova, Super Luminova, white, kind of off-white, that'll glow green at night. So this will glow in response to light, but if it's been in a drawer for 24 hours and you pull it out in the dark, it won't be glowing at all.
Right. It needs that light to kind of, charge it up to say, before it actually starts glowing. And I love it's the different colors on this one, right? I mean, Rolex doesn't do a lot of that.
Lume is not really their specialty.
It's not. They don't, there are plenty of other companies that kind of push the boundaries a lot further with their Lume. But I do love the fact that it's 2 different colors of Lume. And it's almost like that little surprise, right? Where you see it and you don't expect it, but then when the lights go out, you have the markers glowing one color, you have the hands glowing a different color, and it's just kind of a nice little touch, I think.
Yeah, it's a little Easter egg of a combination.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's something they didn't do very often. Towards the end of it, everything was going to just be kind of glowing green, and now everything glows blue. But they were playing around with some colored Lume. You'll see some like blue like this. Some of it will be kind of off pinky color. So it's a snapshot in Rolex's history and kind of a good display of it'll glow differently, and you can make it look different colors in the daylight as well.
Yeah.
And again, not something they do anymore. So if you look at a modern Rolex watch, it'll have a distinctly different luminous appearance.
And I love the fact that the Arabics all glow. So this one, it's a lot of Lume, and I love that. I love when you really turn the lights out and it's got a good charge on it and it's really glowing. Like the Submariner has the dots, which is great, but when you see the Arabics and it's completely glowing, it's just so impressive with the lights out. I think it's really cool. It's a nice touch.
And it's subtle during its non-lumed moments as well. You know, it's not screaming, I'm waiting to kind of activate and emit sort of its coloring. It kind of rests really well sort of in that daylight, but then of course you get that pop.
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily know. I mean, if you're not a watch person or you don't really know about it, you could see that and kind of be surprised when the lights go off and the Lume comes up, because it doesn't look like a surrounded Lume pot where you're expecting it to glow when the lights go off.
Well, we do have another example that I'm kind of excited to get to. This has a little bit different of a configuration when we're speaking about Lume. We have this Tudor Heritage Chrono. It's beautiful, even cooler Lume.
Yeah, I think kind of something worth noting at this point is Tritium, Radium, Luminova, Super Luminova, none of these are proprietary to any one specific company. So you're going to see watches, whether it's Omega, Rolex, what have you, from the 1970s, 80s, all finished with Tritium. And Super Luminova, you're going to find on watches outside of Rolex during those years as well. Tudor, Omega, likewise. And this Tudor right here, it's a modern, despite its vintage aesthetic, it's a modern watch, and so it's got green glowing Super Luminova on its hands and markers.
Yeah, and I love that this one has a lot of Lume on it. I mean, when you turn the lights off, you see those home plate style markers around, and even the hands, they're the triangles, but they're really wide in the center and they kind of taper out. So when it actually gets to glowing, it's bright. There's a lot of Lume on there. I think it's really nice looking.
Yeah, the way that photoluminescent Lume works is the more you have it and the thicker the application, the brighter it's going to glow, because there's just more of it to glow.
Sure.
It kind of works as this sort of ceramicized powder that's suspended in pigments and resins and whatnot to make it. So when you have these big luminous plots or these thick cups to fill it with, you get a lot more glow than if you were to just kind of paint it on. And so that's why the hands on that Tudor are probably going to have a much larger, brighter glow than, say, that Datejust next to it, simply due to the amount of Lume on it.
You're so smart sometimes, Ripley. It's helpful to hear you kind of break it down. I mean,
I like things that glow.
I was going to say, I'm an aesthetics person, and when it comes to Lume, I've always been a fan of Lume. This Tudor example really kind of surprised me. I'd never really seen it kind of in its own uniqueness, especially when you're speaking to sort of the surface area that it is taking up. It really allows it to glow, and it's just a fun take on Lume. I really felt like they leaned into sort of the Lume side of things here versus it kind of being an afterthought.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on the Tudor, you got white, appears white in the daylight, glows green at night, similar to the hands on that Datejust. But then moving over to the Omega, what you get is the colored Lume. It's colored in the daylight. It's kind of got this like kind of patina, burnt orangey yellow color
tone to it.
So they've colored it with pigment, similar to how the blue is on the Datejust. But when you turn it off at night, that's not at all what it's going to, it doesn't glow yellow or red.
This is one of the best transitions.
Yeah, so what you get on this one, not only does the dial and hands glow, but the bezel markings also glow, which is nice.
That's awesome. Right. It's a nice surprise, because a lot of them you see, the Submariner, it looks like it could. It's similar. You don't really notice if it looms or not. You turn it off and the pip glows, which is great, but none of the other markers on the bezel glows. This one, you turn it off. The first time I saw it, I was kind of surprised. I was like, oh wow, that bezel looks amazing, right?
Yeah, and then on top of that, you get two different colors. So although all of the luminous material kind of has that sort of burnt sandy color on it, you turn it out at night, you get The seconds hand, the hour hand, the dial markings are going to be blue, but you get the minute hand in green, so you can have that contrasting more in the dark to track elapsed time against the bezel. So here's an instance where they all look the same way in the light, and then they glow differently in the dark, which is different than the Datejust, where the markers, the hour markers look blue and they end up glowing blue.
Yeah, another kind of surprise, which I think is really nice, right?
Well, our last example is definitely one that many have seen and many love. This is kind of the I don't know, favorite, if you will, at least for me, from Rolex. So we've got this Meteorite GMT Master 2. Definitely has the chromalite, which is basically the newest material that Rolex has used.
Yeah, and it's exclusive to Rolex. So while you'll find Super Luminova, Tritium, Luminova on other watches, most modern brands are using some type of Super Luminova or equivalent. Rolex is using their own compound that they call chromalite. It functions the same way as Super Luminova, and will glow blue and appear white in the daylight. But it's will function the same way, but you won't find a chromalite luminous dial on a watch other than a modern Rolex.
Right. And this is a great example of Rolex's. This is kind of their gold standard in terms of lume right now, right? I mean, this is an amazing example we have, right, with the the white gold GMT with the meteorite dial. I mean, that's a whole nother show in itself. But with the lume on it, I mean, it's the same lume as you see on the Submariner and the Sea Dweller, and it's kind of their standard, which I think is beautiful. I mean, there's a big debate out there between, what do you like, the blue lume or do you like the green lume or whatever? Personally, I like them both, but if I was really pressured to make a choice, I think I like the blue a little bit better.
Yeah.
It
feels a little fresher.
It's fresher, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's kind of newer, and but anyway, I'm in the blue camp, and I think that this, like all the other modern Rolexes that use the chromalite, look fantastic in the dark.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see what you guys think. Let us know. Do you like the blue lume? Do you like the green lume? I know it's kind of divisive out there, so leave us a comment below and let us know which camp you're in.
Yeah, we definitely want to know. Ripley, where are you on that decisive point?
It would honestly depend on the type of watch. So what Rolex gained, chromalite lasts longer than Luminova, but it's not quite as bright when it's at peak brightness. So maybe for a dive watch where I want it to be really, really bright, but I'm not going to be down there for much more than an hour or so, I might want Super Luminova for maximum brightness. But maybe for a watch like a travel watch where I got plenty of daylight when I'm out, it might be on my wrist while I'm out in the evening, I want it to be glowing well into the night, I might want chromalite where it's going to last a little longer, not be as bright at peakness. But I think that's where Rolex was going, where if it's bright enough to see, it's bright enough to see.
Sure.
But as it diminishes, having it last longer increases long-term legibility. So I think that's why they made the switch. But for me, it'd probably just depend on the watch and what looks the best with it. I would love blue lume on this red and blue GMT. If I had a green watch, maybe I'd want green to play into that aesthetic.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of these are pretty great examples. I definitely say you can kind of see just in the options that we brought to the table today, there's variety. And that's the beauty of improvements and I guess the watch world as a whole.
Yeah.
You get to kind of watch the evolution of lume kind of take off. And chromalite isn't going to be the end all be all for Rolex or any of the other brands as a whole.
Yeah, it's so cool to see so many different lumes, the way that they do it. I mean, you see other companies, we don't have any shown here, but where there's we have two colors of lume, and there's more. There's red and green and blue, and they really pack, and they do tritium and Super Luminova, and just these crazy amounts of lume that really push the envelope. And I love that. It's just such an interesting part of watches as a whole, and the whole watch community. It's a thing, and I mean, for me, it's kind of nostalgic. I remember being a kid, and you get whatever cheap watch, and it glows, and it was like, this is the best, right? It's just so cool that it's this glowing part of your watch, and I think that's part of the reason that so many people feel that connection with lume. I mean, it's just such a cool thing, and it, like I said, it's kind of nostalgic. So this is a great example of a bunch of different, really good lumed watches.
I'm curious too, you guys, do you have a favorite watch with lume? What is it? Definitely let us know kind of your favorites. These are just a few of ours. We love talking lume. This is definitely not the first conversation that we've had about lume, and hopefully it will not be the last. So let us know what you guys are loving in the comments. Ripley, always good to see you. Justin, you're the best, especially at taking lume shots, so be sure to check out the Bob's Watches Instagram. We've been pumping a lot of new content there, as well as some beautiful lume photos taken by Justin himself. And if you guys haven't done so already, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can stay up to date on all of our latest videos outside of Watch Talk as well. So again, thanks for joining us. We will have more conversations soon. Until then, you guys, be well.